Hello everyone, this is Anna Amelia from North East Animal Rights. Today we have Jackie Norman from Vegan FTA down in New Zealand. I'm very grateful that Jackie has agreed to be interviewed today for our Saturday Spotlight interviews. So without further ado, I'd just like to say hello to Jackie and we will go straight into our questions. So first of all, can you tell me about your vegan journey? How did it begin for you and when did you decide you wanted to do more?
Sure. Hello from New Zealand. Yeah, thank you for getting up early this morning, Hannah, so that we can have a chat. Yeah, my vegan journey, I've been vegetarian on and off since I was 13. And I've been kind of veggie curious for a while about taking that next step to veganism. And like a lot of people, I thought it was, a little bit too hard, too extreme, that I'd only be living on fresh air and goji berries and that kind of thing. So it all seemed a little bit too hard. But then, I guess the seeds were planted quite a long time ago. And then the catalyst really was a friend of mine. She'd been vegan for 25 years over here. And every day she would post things on Facebook about animal abuse or, this is happening, that's happening. And much as I liked her, I actually thought about unfollowing her because, I thought, I don't want to see this stuff. Quite often her posts were first thing in the morning. They'd be the first ones I'd see about this terrible thing that was happening. And I was like, oh, your stuff really gets me down. But then one day she shared one and it was about signing a petition for pigs in New Zealand to ban farrowing crates in New Zealand. And so I thought, oh, I'll be a nice person. I'll go click on it, And when I clicked into that petition and found what was going on in our own country, we always like to think these things don't go on in our own backyard, that it happens other places, lesser countries. When I saw what was happening in New Zealand, I straight away, I literally went vegan on the spot. I just thought I cannot contribute to that. But, and so, yeah, I threw myself into the whole vegan lifestyle and discovered that, there is so much more to vegan food than fresh air and goji berries. But I didn't really get into activism until another activist approached me. And I was actually in a previous life, I was a dairy farmer over here in New Zealand. I grew up in Hampshire in the UK and came over here when I was 19 and got sort of roped into the dairy industry. And yeah, I got stuck in it for 18 years. And so when I became vegan and tried to find other vegans in the country, we didn't really, there was my husband who went vegan 5 days after I did, but we didn't know any others. And so, like a lot of us, we try and reach out on Facebook and social media and that kind of thing. And so I mentioned in one of the Facebook groups in New Zealand that I'd been a dairy farmer, and another activist, Jessica Strathdy, who is the organizer of Mothers Against Dairy over here, she got in touch with me and she said, you've got a voice, you've got to use it. We're unique in that we know both sides of experience, and we've got to tell people the realities of the dairy industry. And so I got into it that way, and I started off by writing. I think actually the first thing that I did was Safe. She put me in touch with Safe, and they wanted me to do a video about my experience taking cows and separating cows from calves, and the role that I used to have to play in that. And I was so terrified of the backlash from farmers that I made them distort my voice and, blur out my face and everything. And and it was quite, I was terrified of because I knew that the response would not be good from farmers. And yeah, sure enough, there were death threats, there were threats of graphic violence against me and all sorts. And so that really didn't do much for my confidence. But in the end, I watched the likes of Earthling Ed and James Aspey doing their thing, and they were never scared. They just got out there and did it. And, they didn't have that farming background that I did. So I thought, well, if I can, if they're out there doing it, then I need to be doing that and sharing my truth. And so they really helped a lot. And, now I don't care what people think, it's about the animals, and I'm just lucky to be in this position.
Yeah, I think you are, a really strong advocate. I can't even say the word advocate, because you have.
Really, it's okay.
Because you have seen the other side. I think you can. One of the things we get is you don't know what you're talking about. You haven't been there, sort of thing, where you have. I was talking to Jay Wild of. I don't know if you've heard of him. The 73 cows.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've spoken to him a few months ago. And he was saying the same thing. Obviously, he was kind of like, the farming community just absolutely hated him. He didn't get, I don't think he got death threats or anything, but I think he was very unpopular in the dairy farming, in the beef farming industry. He is. I think the fact that you've been there, I mean, we've got some people who have been, abattoir workers, and they've kind of come over the other side. And I think that's really, really powerful, because you have seen it, you've literally seen it right in front of you. We know as animal rights activists of the links between the treatment of animals, particularly wildlife, and diseases like coronavirus, but also know that there's been a definite increase in plant-based sales throughout the pandemic. We know, for example, when obviously all the shelves were being cleared and people were finally getting out to taking soya milks and almond milks and oat milks and everything, but it's still not been seen as a solution to the problems we're creating. What are we missing as activists and as ordinary citizens? What should we be making the governments listen? How should we be doing that?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, to be honest, I think that more solidarity as a movement would help a lot. We really need to work together. We have, you have your health vegans, your eco vegans, your animal rights vegans, and a lot of the time there's so much separation. It's sad, but some of us look down on others and that kind of thing. And I heard an interview with Dr. Michael Clapper earlier in the year, where he said, if we want to be taken seriously as a movement, we need to look like we've got our together, we need to look like we've got it sorted if we want people like governments to take us seriously. And we can't be taken seriously if everyone's fragmented and bickering. Veganism isn't a competition. It's we really need to listen to one another is what we need to do. And if we want to grow the movement and have that solidarity and just get that respect and have people listen to us, I think that's the biggest thing for me, because I see it all the time. And I'm sure you do on Facebook as well. Everyone's just bickering about who's the most vegan, and it just it drives me mental. It's like we're all in it for the greater good. No matter how we come into veganism, the results will be the same and everybody will win. So, this is what we need to be doing. It's just not sort of saying, I'm more vegan than you because, you did it for this, or we just need to get rid of that if we're going to be and have that solidarity if we're really going to make change and have those big people listen to us. And I think on an individual level, educate yourself as much as possible. There are some fantastic podcasts. I love Earthling Ed. I love Seb Alex is another fantastic activist, so eloquent. I love listening to those, and sign up to email lists like Surge. Surge is one of my favorites. And there's also ones that talk about regenerative farming and different kinds of agriculture. There's Refarmed, there's Farm Forward. I sign up to all those kind of mailing lists to see what's happening, and those kind of things. They really give me hope, I guess. So.
Yeah. Well, you talked about Reformed, and I know obviously G Wild is getting involved with that. That's obviously Earthling Ed and Surge are working massively on that. But also I'm talking to Rebecca Knowles at the end of this week, she is the founder of Farmers for Stock-Free Farming in Scotland. So she's doing exactly that. It's like sort of like a Scottish version of Reformed, and she's her approach is kind of like looking at the alternatives for farming. Kind of like the holiday industry, the forestry industry, that sort of thing, so they have a real route rather than just kind of stop doing this and you've got no job sort of thing. So I think those things are really, really valuable. And Earthling Ed, I love Earthling Ed. He's just so cool and laid back. He's brilliant.
Oh, he really is. He really is. I don't know how he does it, but yeah, he's great. And I hadn't heard of that organization before. I have to look him up. It's awesome.
Yeah. Right, so Paul McCartney, he's campaigning to bring in mandatory vegan meal options in UK schools. Currently, veganism is a protected characteristic in the UK. This probably will go. Obviously, we are leaving the EU, so that this is one of the things which was in that. But that means every child has a legal right to have vegan meals, regardless of whether they would normally provide them or not. But it's still a battle to access vegan meals in schools. One of our activists, Kevin, he has 2 vegan children, and one of them's just started school, and he had a real battle to get his child vegan food. It wasn't so much we won't provide it; it's just we don't know how to provide it. We don't know what it is, I worked in a secondary school, and one of my responsibilities was looking after the catering contract. So I was able to influence the menu choices, and I also had a really good boss who was very supportive as well. But not everybody's in that situation. Schools are always teaching, food technology, ethics and health, geography, environmental issues. But so why are schools so resistant to making vegan options more accessible? What should we be doing? Is it vegan? Should we be calling it plant-based to make it more palatable? Where we go, what's going on?
It's a hard one, isn't it? Do we use the V word? It's yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, it brings back memories, actually, you asking that question. When I was growing up, I was severely lactose intolerant to the point of, I'd literally throw up if I had milk or cheese or anything like that. And so, yeah, it was quite a severe reaction. And it was sort of late 70s, early 80s, show my age now. And we had this real battle axe of a headmistress. And my mum, she would write to the school, and all the time she would say, please don't give Jackie dairy products in school lunches. She's got a really bad reaction. She's severely intolerant. And the headmistress, she just wouldn't listen. She just dismissed it. I was just being awkward. There's no such thing as food allergies or intolerances. And I was just being a fussy, awkward child. And time and again, my mum just, kept on, don't do it. And in the end, one day, the headmistress had had enough. And so she sat me down and she said, right, here's your macaroni cheese. You're not leaving the table until you eat it all. So I ate it all. And then I threw it all up in her lap. And after that, she never made me do it again. But the moral of the story is, don't back down. I mean, thank goodness, hopefully, the school principals aren't that horrendous these days. But but don't back down. You have to keep on asking and not let it go. As parents, we're naturally protective of our kids, just like my mom was of me. And we all want the best for our kids. And if that means that we have to stand up, if there's an issue and no one's addressed it yet in your school, you need to be the one to address it, because like you say, a lot of the time it's lack of know-how. I mean, I don't know what school dinners are like these days, but there's probably been decades, generations of just serving up the same stuff because they've been taught that this is what a healthy kid needs. And when they've got the responsibility of having to give their pupils good nutrition and not knowing how, that can be a scary thing. I mean, yeah, when I went vegan, I thought I was going to be permanently starving as well, so I guess it's quite a big responsibility to have on the school dinner ladies and that kind of thing. But there are a lot of people that are out there creating change. One lady that we met is Meredith Marine, and she has a website, Vegan Hospitality. I think she may have veganaruba.com as well. And when she went to live in Aruba and Caribbean islands, nobody had a clue about vegan food. And so they would just serve up vegetables and pasta. And so she'd say, well, this is nice, but where's my protein? And they'd say, what do you mean protein? Well, what do you mean? And so she said, well, all you got to do is just, grill me some tofu and add to this, and then I'll have a complete meal. That'd be fine. And so, she's been a fantastic mentor for us. She actually does a vegan hospitality course, and that's what we need to be doing. It's hospitality activism. It's a great form of activism, and it's not just restaurants and other eateries that we should be going to, but also hospitals and schools as well. But rather than berating schools for not offering options, instead we should be encouraging them and instructing them and maybe getting them to sign up to courses like Meredith Marine's, the vegan hospitality, because it'll your input is so valuable, and berating and hauling people over the coals gets you nowhere. But if you can encourage and empower and say, and you just need one person to take up the baton, and then others will follow, and then it won't be such a weird thing anymore. It'll become a usual thing. I was actually just talking to Parliament in Australia this afternoon, and they said, we've been asked to reintroduce milk back into schools, cow's milk. What do you think of that? And I said, well, I don't think much of that. But I said, there are going to be people that want cow's milk, that want to give their kids cow's milk. You can't force everybody all the time. I said, but if you're going to do that, at least offer plant milk as well, so they've got the choice. So I think, so Paul's on the right track. Good on him. That's great. And there's got to be a healthy balance somewhere, but yeah, just take up the baton. you know,
Yes.
someone's got to do it. Someone's got to take
Yeah.
up the issue and just not back down, because
Yeah.
it's not going to go away. Veganism's not
No,
going to go away.
it isn't. I know they think and hope it might, but it won't.
No.
It's taken us too long to get here. We're not going anywhere. When the school I worked in, it was a secondary school, and we did a big promotion just before I left, because I retired in April, and we did a big promotion from Quorn, and I specifically said that they had to bring in just the vegan options, and the kids absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. I mean, apart from the fact it was free food, but they actually really did like it. You know, and the options they had, you know, they had sort of on a daily basis were, you know, sort of meat and 2 veg, they had pasta and had a curry, then they had a sandwich. So it's not really very sort of enticing, not, you know, not really very imaginative. But obviously the catering staff are working on a shoestring and budget, so they're really struggling as well. So it was kind of getting them to work with Quorn to say, you know, that make the prices the same. So when they could, you know, they could serve it, they know they're not sort of, you know, not making any losses out of it. Yeah.
Good idea.
So I noticed that on one of your things you want to do is obviously you're trying to make your work as accessible as possible, and we want to do that as well. And I noticed one of your aims is to produce more films and videos with subtitles on. We have a really good activist in our group who works very hard doing all the transcriptions for all the interviews, so they're accessible as possible. And we also have a deaf activist as well who uses sign language. And when we do outreach, when we're able to do it, obviously we can't at the moment because of lockdown, we both wear badges saying we are British Sign Language speakers, so we can communicate with people. So what other things can we do as a smaller group to make our work and our activism more accessible?
Oh, well, let me think. I mean, activism is, I guess the best way to do it is to make it more accessible is for people to change their perception of what activism actually is. You know, you have deaf activists, and yeah, that's something that you know, we try. We're a really small team, and so that's something that we want to do, is make sure that we get more subtitles and that kind of thing. We've also been asked to caption our videos in different languages, which is interesting because none of us are fluent in anything yet, but that's something that we're working on, you know. So I mean, yeah, it's Vegan FTA came about largely due to a chronic illness. I've got a chronic pain condition. I've got fibromyalgia as well. And I never know what my body's going to do from one day to the next. And so I've been a writer for about 20 years. And so I got into Vegan FTA writing that way. And it's just grown from there. But, you know, I get frustrated that I can't always go to vigils and in protests and things like that. But then I'm like, well, I'm still, you know, by writing, I'm still doing something. I'm doing something that not everybody else is doing. I'm still getting the word out there. And we've learned through doing our series Activist that there are countless forms of activism. You know, we were just talking before about hospitality activism, but there's business activism, there's creative activism. And, you know, to make it more accessible, I think just, yeah, you don't have to be on the front line all the time. It's fantastic the people that can be on the front line and do all those great supermarket storms and things like that, you know, the real in your face stuff, because that really works with people as well. And it's fantastic to do all the cubes. But if you don't have the time or the confidence to do that, do what you can do. Like I said, it was a Facebook post that made me go vegan. And I see all the time people saying, you know, oh, I never get any reactions on my posts. You know, nobody likes my post when I post vegan stuff. It's like, well, it's gonna, what do you do when you're posting things about animal abuse or something awful happening? People aren't going to rush to like it, but it doesn't mean that they don't notice it. You know, it's still got that impact. You're still sowing that seeds. That is still a form of activism, you know. And I know some sort of senior vegans as well that, you know, their form of, they want to do more to help the animals or to help organizations like us, but they don't have the confidence to get out there and protest and things. And so, you know, they make weekly donations, and that's their form of activism. It's still growing. It's helping to do good. It's helping to make a difference. You know, we were talking to Patrick Baboumian a little while back. He was lovely. And I completely thought that he, you know, being on the Game Changers and being this big muscle man, I thought, well, he obviously became vegan for health, you know. but it turns out, you know, once we heard his backstory, he's absolutely 100% vegan for the animals. You know, he happens to be a strong man, and he uses that to promote veganism, and then that's his form of activism. But he's just created a comic book called Earthraiser, which is going to be fantastic. You know, whoever thought vegan activism could be through a comic book? So, you know, you can, if you're creative, you know, write a vegan poem, or draw a picture, or write musical. There are so many ways that you can be an activist and have other people take notice and make a difference. So it's, you know, veganism, the activism rather, is so much more accessible than people think. You know, we don't have to be out there on the front line all the time. I mean, like you said, we've got close to 400,000 followers now, and there's just 4 of us, only 3 of us are full-time. Only 1 of us gets paid, and we do it for, you know, we do it for the love of it. So we wouldn't change anything. It's just, thinking outside the square. You know, that's how Activist Series came about as well. We were stuck in COVID, and we were looking at people that they were frustrated because they could no longer go to vigils and do all the things that they normally do within their activist groups. And so it got us thinking, well, just like you and I are doing now, you know, that's how we reach people. That's how we make a difference. And Joey Carbstrong, you know, he just started on his phone. He said he didn't know what he was doing when he started activism, and he just gets so angry about stuff. So he'd sit in his car and talk into his phone, and now look at him. So, it's as accessible as we want it to be. I think sometimes we just have to think outside the square, think about our strengths. Think about what we love doing. You know, I never thought when I became vegan that it would turn into a full-time job as well.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because when I retired, my goal was to do this sort of maybe 3 or 4 days a week, and it's literally 24/7. It's literally like, you just, from the moment you wake up, it's just thinking about something, got a schedule for the day, and then you kind of like keep on going, and like, where's the day going?
Absolutely. There's always more ideas, isn't there? We need clones or something.
But I mean, obviously with the lockdown, I mean, we've just gone into another lockdown. Well, tomorrow we go into another lockdown. So we were doing our stalls and outreach in Newcastle, and you know, they were pretty good. They were well received, but obviously you're kind of reaching only the people who are physically in front of you and anybody who was watching the live stream at the time. But what we've found is we've replaced those with live streams on the subject we would have done. For example, this weekend we're doing Adopt Own Shop. In the past we've done dairy, and we've done we've done loads of other, it's not just about veganism. It's not just about food and going through all the sort of like things, the ways in which we abuse animals. And we've found that those videos are actually reaching a lot more people than we would have been able to speak to if we had been in front of them. So we are trying to be creative. It's like you said, it's trying to be as accessible as possible and think of loads of ways to sort of do things to reach different people.
Absolutely. We find as well when we do live videos, I wouldn't have thought that they would get as much traffic, but they really do. They do well. They always do surprisingly well. I think it's just because you're catching people in the moment, and you can see how many people are watching, and like you say, you get a greater reach from it. So awesome. I'm going to have to catch up on those. I'm going to have to be in the right place at the right time.
So has there been anything from your vegan and activist journey which has stuck out for you, your favorite or your most successful article or interview or a project you've worked on? What's the one thing you look back on and you think, oh, I really enjoyed doing that?
Oh, this is an easy question, actually. I can answer this one, no problem. Is back in August, I was asked to do a talk for VegFest Summerfest online thingy. I'm part of the Vegan Women's Leadership Network over here. It's a global network community which is founded by Katrina Fox, and it's a wonderful thing to be part of. And she found out about my dairy farming background, and she said, you need to talk about this. And once again, I was terrified. I had to do a 45-minute monologue about my years in the dairy industry, the things that I experienced, and also talk about better ways that we can advocate, as vegans, talking to farmers to be able to communicate better and break down some of those barriers. So that was really scary. And it was a complete turnaround. Like I said at the start, when I did the safe video, and I had my voice distorted and my face all blocked out. This time it was me in the flesh, no holds barred, talking about stuff for 45 minutes. And I talked about the things that I witnessed, some of my worst things. and you know, I cried in it, and we left all that in because it was real, and it was very cathartic, I think, because I had to, you know, it brought forth a lot of memories, and I had to talk about some of the worst things that I experienced. But it was great to get it out there. And we've heard from people, you know, it's been, I didn't think it was very good myself, you know. I guess you always put yourself down, but I did it completely off the cuff and in no script. And I thought, oh God, people are thinking I'm just rambling, you know, there's this woman rambling and crying and all this kind of thing. But I had so much feedback about it. We've had people like this radio host in America that saw it, and she ditched dairy. She's on iHeartRadio, I think, over in the States, and she watched it and she ditched dairy, and now she's been keeping up with all her listeners about it and saying how she's going and encouraging them to do the same. And so yeah, it was a really good thing. And you know, this time I didn't have any backlash or anything, not that I know of. And I think it helps that I don't care anymore. It's like, I've got to do this for the animals. And it was really good to get it out there. And I can give you the link to it or whatever. It's still out there. So.
I would love to listen. I mean, the ones when you were talking about the talk you were given there and being sort of quite cathartic, and you were very emotional doing it. I was just sort of like thinking about the ones which have made a mark on me, and it's where the speaker has opened up emotionally. You know, when I was talking to Peter Egan, he was getting a bit upset in some of the answers he was giving me, and Julie Gallatley. But also I saw Julie Gallatley speak. I heard her speak last year at Vegan Camp Out, and you know, she was exactly the same. It's just so much more authentic, I think, kind of when people have been there and seen it, and you're reaching people. So if you've got anybody in the audience who's not convinced before, they're going to be convinced pretty much straight away, really. So I think it is really good that you do things like that.
Yeah. I think after that, it was good. It was like, you know, just bring it on, like whatever else. Like I've got all that out. There's you know, it can't get any more. It's all out there now. So I'm just going to keep talking about it as you know, as much as I need to. So.
Yeah. So we're talking about the emotional side of things now, and I know obviously we all as activists see some awful things, and you'll have sort of like things from your past as well, and as a dairy farmer, and it's difficult to deal with them. So how do you look after your own mental health and well-being?
I definitely recommend meditating. That was something that, and you know, I always used to think, oh, that's only what like hippie groovy people do, isn't it? Like, you know, but I got really close to burning out. Probably about 18 months ago. I could feel it just building, and I was feeling worse and worse. And a friend of mine, vegan activist, her name's Lucy Verde Rose, and she has a vegan support community called Paradise Rising that she was finding. It was Rising with a Z, and she said, you know, just get in. I had to do a burnout questionnaire type thing to see, you know, how close I was to just crashing, that she'd developed specifically for activists. And I was right on the teetering on the edge of, you know, complete collapse sort of thing. And so I thought, oh, well, this isn't good. This isn't good. So yeah, she was a lot of support. She said, you know, just start meditating. And I said, well, how do I do that? And so she said, well, you know, we've got groups, but she said so many activists meditate. It just keeps us sane. And it really does. You know, we started doing, there's so many meditations. We started doing the guided ones online. And we're still doing it. It's a daily practice for us now. And it really did save me from burnout. And yeah, it just helps you cope with things. I think it was the poet Rumi that says, you know, when did you last visit with yourself? And I think we all just need, you know, without hoping not to sound too groovy or anything, but we all need that little time to just go inward and just think of nothing else. So definitely recommend meditation. I recommend that to anyone. I know there are a lot of activists that do that. Another thing I do, which is kind of ironic considering my job, but I do hibernate quite frequently from social media. I think you just have to, you know, you just, I mean, if I've got like 5,000 Facebook friends and 4,500 of them are vegan, you know, you're going to get bombarded with a lot of stuff. And, you know, we all lose faith in the world and think it's a dreadful place and that we're not, you know, we can't make it stop right now. And it gets very hard to deal with. And so sometimes I just have to just step away from it, even for a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
I know even the likes of Joey Carbstrong, they do the same as well, because you know, it doesn't make it go away. You still know all this horrible stuff is out there, but just not having to see it, not having to deal with it 24/7, and just having that time to just get back on track and feel stronger again, you know. And by doing that, you know, sometimes I feel bad that I'm not present to see it all, but if it means that I can be better for the animals and be a better advocate, then so be it, you know. So those are the two main things that I do.
Yeah. I use meditation, and it is really, really good. I used to do it at work first thing in the morning, and kind of, you know, you have like 5-10 minutes, and it really, really sets you up. But when we do outreach, obviously sometimes outreach is straightforward, but other times you get people who are quite abusive and aggressive, and it's not pleasant sort of dealing with it. But we do have, we all go for food afterwards. This is in the old days before pandemic, but we go for food afterwards, and we sit there and kind of like go through everything what's happened, and kind of like try to sort of like leave the restaurant where everything's kind of sort of like being discussed, and, you know, so people are not going away with things in the head. But yeah, meditation, I think meditation is a really, really good one. And social media is just, I completely agree with you. I mean, I think it's a total addiction. It's a really, really good tool. It's a brilliant tool. We've just got our Instagram account, so we're finally in the 21st century. So that's another thing we've got to watch out for and post on as well. But it's you can kind of be sitting sort of innocently scrolling through things and thinking, yeah, that's a good post. That's you know, that's really useful. Then you see something which will just stay with you, and it's just awful, and you can't get it out of your head. So that's your afternoon ruined. So I think what you're saying about staying off social media for a little bit is really, really a good way of kind of redressing the balance and centering yourself again.
Absolutely. It's one of those things that, you know, you might be off it for a week or two, and you're like, oh, what did I miss? And you go back and like, you know, actually I didn't miss anything. It's the same every time, but, you know, it's a necessary evil for me, because I need it for work, you know. And like you say, it's a fantastic source of information and education, but I think the human mind can only take on so much sometimes.
Yeah. So we've seen a massive increase in veganism over the past 10 years. I've been vegan for 10 years now, and I know how difficult it was at the beginning and how easy it is now. It's so accessible. So how positive are you for the future of the movement? I mean, do you think, for example, we'll see the fall of dairy? How you know, how do you think things are coming? Any trends emerging you're seeing which we're kind of like making inroads on?
Oh, I think I just had to I had to give evidence this afternoon and to Parliament in Australia, and there was me and one other MP who was vegan, and everybody else was from the dairy farming sector, or shooters, farmers, and fishers party and whatnot. And I had to sit there and say, yep, it's inevitable. You know, dairy industry is going to crash. There's no getting away from it, as far as I'm concerned. I'd like to say it would be in my lifetime. I don't know. Mainly, a lot of that comes down to money. You know, I mean, for example, a lot of the farmers that I knew, they're millions of dollars in debt. You know, by the time they were sort of 35, they owed the bank $4 million. And so, you know, what do you do when you've been going to the bank all these years and saying, you know, I want to borrow money to grow my cows or build a new cow shed, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're expected to go to them and say, oh, right, well, you know, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to grow oats or something. You know, what's the bank going to say? Doing a complete, you know, 360. So, you know, I think it's inevitable, but I do think it's going to take time. I'd like to think it was in my lifetime. I mean, crikey, you know, things have changed so much, even since I was growing up. I mean, we know so much more now. Like, for example, I grew up in the UK, and I grew up watching Blue Peter and Live Aid and all of that kind of stuff. I was in England at that time, and you know, when we had the starving in Ethiopia and all of that kind of thing, and everybody was raising money for the famine, and you know, back then nobody questioned why there was no food. There just wasn't any. You know, there wasn't enough food to go around in the world. And so everybody pulled together, and now things aren't like that. You know, we know why there isn't enough food in the world, and we know what we need to do about it. And so, you know, again, that's another thing that isn't going to go away, and that people are going to have to face whether they like it or not. You know, 65 to 75% of the world's population is lactose intolerant, and there's more plant milk coming out all the time. You've got the likes of Matthew Glover with Veg Capital, you know, they're doing wonderful things, investing in, you know, plant-based alternatives. It's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. And, you know, more and more things are coming out about dairy, things like, you know, I had to tell Parliament this afternoon that, you know, cow's milk is comprised of 80% casein, which is, you know, the most relevant chemical carcinogen there is. You should have seen their faces, you know. So, but it's out there. That knowledge is out there. You know, things have changed so much in the last, you know, 40 years. So, you know, if I live to be 80, maybe it will have been phased out. Who knows? But I think, you know, veganism is only going to get bigger.
I think you're right. I think with veganism, I think probably in our lifetime maybe, but dairy, I think I'm hopeful that dairy will, because you said there's so many options out there now, and kids particularly are just trying them without even thinking about it. And we had, when we started obviously the lockdown, and all the businesses started to panic because they weren't sort of getting the money. There was a big dairy bailout, and there was absolute hell on in the animal rights movement over here, because the government was putting loads of money into dairy, and we were like, put money into reforming, put money into other things, you know, but don't be putting money into, all you're doing is just, you know, they're already subsidized, so why are you giving them more money to keep them going when actually there's cheaper alternatives there and sustainable alternatives?
Absolutely. We're exactly the same over here. And you know, they just keep on propping up the dairy industry. And, you know, we have crazy things over here, like the government pays dairy farmers $40 million a year not to pollute one of our tourist Lake Taupo. That's just one lake, you know, don't farm around there. They pay $12 billion in subsidies to dairy farmers in the Canterbury region because our waterways are so polluted. You know, 2/3 of our native fish, I think it might be 3/4 actually, 3/4 of our native fish are verging on extinction because our waterways are so polluted from, you know, all the over runoff, whatever, from dairy. And the stupid thing is, you know, they're forking out billions of dollars a year, but they're paying more in subsidies than what the entire industry is earning. So it's just bonkers, absolutely bonkers. So, you know, it's going to collapse eventually. I mean, it's just crazy that there are still people in their 50s and 60s and beyond that, you know, still don't realize that for them to have milk in their cups of tea or on their cereal, you know, a cow has had to give them birth. And you know, that baby will most likely have been killed. So, you know, that knowledge is still not out there. But, you know, the likes of you and us and all the Earthling Eds and the James Aspies and all the other activists out there, you know, we're getting that word out there. And the more, when people make that connection, I mean, I didn't make that connection when I was dairy farming. I was vegetarian the whole time because I could never eat an animal that I knew. You know, I was like, no, go to the slaughterhouse, that's it. But I never made the connection, which is, you know, people would probably be watching this and thinking, God, is she thick or something? But maybe it was because I never drank milk. I don't know. And I was a mother as well, which is even more crazy. But I didn't make the connection between death and dairy about, you know, so I hated the calves, you know, going to the slaughterhouse and all of that kind of stuff. I hated the amount of death, but I never connected it to being because of the milk. And so, you know, when I was singing to the cows in the shed when I was milking them, it never occurred to me that, you know, I was stripping them, I was robbing them of something that was meant for their babies. So yeah, you know, people are waking up, but this information is getting out there. And as for me, when I made the connection, it wasn't until after I went vegan that I made the connection as to, you know, dairy, I think, being worse than just beef farming. And my mind was just absolutely blown. You know, I found it very, very hard to live with myself, and I still do. But speaking out is the one thing I can do. You know, it's important. I've got to share this knowledge and hopefully, wake people up. So you're right. It is. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe in 10 years, wouldn't that be awesome? That would be great.
I think you're right about dairy. Obviously, a lot of people are vegetarian because they don't. I mean, I was exactly the same. Until 10 years ago, I was kind of thinking I'm doing enough. There's no direct death caused because of me being vegetarian. And it is. But once you make the connection, I mean, I saw some dairy footage and that was it. So it is kind of constantly sort of getting the information and educating people about what the industry is about. But it's you know, what you said there is absolutely spot on. It's right. So what's next for Vegan FTA?
Oh, we've got so many ideas. So many things that we want to do. You know, we want to make more, we want to make documentaries, you know, full length ones. We've got so many mini series ideas, so much that we want to do. What we really need to do, well, apart from having clones, you know, like I said, we're such a small team, because we just don't get the time to do everything that we want to do. Our to-do list is so long, but you know, we're non-profit, and so obviously we don't do it for the money, but you know, we need to get to the stage that we're trying to make it more sustainable so that we can pay staff, because you know, unfortunately, the reality of human nature is that it's very hard to get people to do something for nothing, particularly on the scale that Vegan FTA requires. You know, it's full time for us, and so that's what we need to be doing. You know, we need to be putting some feelers out there. We need to try and find a fairy godmother or godfather or something that will get behind us. So at least, yeah, you know, the only way that we're going to be able to achieve what we want to achieve is to be able to get more on our team, and yeah, hopefully, you know, that I was talking to the founder of Hoo Ha Sanctuary in New Zealand yesterday. They're doing fantastic things there at the moment. They're helping to rescue and rehome an entire herd of cows. And she was saying, you know, she's got everything so sussed up for an animal sanctuary. It's huge. And she said, I've got 20 staff, and, you know, she pays them all because the workload is so huge, you know. And I just sort of thought, oh, that would be so wonderful if we had 20 staff that we could pay. Just think of the things that we could achieve. Even 10 would be fantastic. So that's you know, what we need to be looking at. But yeah, we have so many ideas. So keep an eye out. It was great because, you know, for COVID, it's been so trying, and it's so awful for you guys to have to go into lockdown again. And although we're so lucky over here, you know, we still don't take that freedom for granted, because it can all end at any time still. So but if it wasn't for COVID, then the activist series wouldn't have been born. You know, we'd still be traveling around the country, racking up heaps of miles and spending heaps of petrol to go and visit, you know, one place after another, or speak to one person. So so yeah, it's been good to diversify and think outside the square, like you've had to with your live streams.
Yeah, you sound as if it's like a 24/7 job, isn't it? You're just kind of like constantly thinking about it all the time. It sounds absolutely brilliant what you're doing, though. I mean, I've loved sort of like researching Vegan FTA before the interview and everything, and you've got so many brilliant things going on. It's absolutely fantastic. It really, really is inspiring. It's and like I said, I love all the sort of like the way that all the information you put out is really accessible as well. It's just so sort of factual and educational and just very straightforward.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think what we really want to do is, you know, there are a lot of news kind of websites. You've got your plant-based news, which is fantastic. You know, they do everything so well. I can't wait for their you know, their annual movies, documentaries. They're fantastic. You've got Live Kindly, so you've got those kind of newsy type places that are already doing things so well. So for us, we're more focused on being a real hub for activists and showcasing, you know, like we were talking about, that there are just so many countless forms of activism, and just getting people to think about what they can do. You know, look at these people doing this or that, or and just think outside the square. Think of what your passions are, what your strengths are, and just go with that, and think about how we can all make a difference in the movement. So I think that's it in a nutshell. You know, just to be that one-stop educational hub for activists. And of course, new vegans as well who want to learn about it.
Of course, yeah. Well, that's all my questions for now. So thank you very much. It's been really, really interesting, and thank you very much for giving up your time. I know obviously it's quite late over there, and you're giving up your evening after having like a really, really busy day. But thank you very much, Jackie Norman from Vegan FTA. This is Anna Amelia from Northeast Animal Rights saying thank you and goodbye for now.